Things are heating up in the major antitrust case against Meta, where the social media giant is accused of unfairly dominating the market. Yesterday, attorneys representing the Federal Trade Commission presented an email written by CEO Mark Zuckerberg back in 2018. It showed that he once considered making Instagram a separate company. The email reads in part, quote, "I'm beginning to wonder whether spinning Instagram out is the only structure that will accomplish a number of important goals. As calls to break up the big tech companies grow, there is a non-trivial chance that we will be forced to spin out Instagram and perhaps WhatsApp in the next 5 to 10 years anyways."
Billionaires are quickly learning that you simply cannot negotiate with someone who is Trump. Because while it might be plausible to think that billionaires would at least understand other billionaires, it turns out that becoming and existing as a billionaire isn't just about having strong business acumen or being completely divorced from empathy to a sociopathic level. There is some unpredictability there that should be taken into account, and Trump can be a bit of a wild card.
Jeff Bezos came, Bill Gates came, Mark Zuckerberg came. Many of them came numerous times. The bankers have all come. Everybody's coming.
One thing that's always been consistent about Trump is that he will do whatever it is that he wants to do, and the things that he wants to do are things that will in some way benefit him. If there's no personal benefit to Trump or his money, then why is he doing it? The answer is that he's not doing it. But he will happily take money if someone's just giving him money. Quid pro quo, never heard of him. When Trump has the higher ground, there are no guarantees that he will deliver on his end of things. He doesn't even pay his workers, and that is the most basic of business agreements. What does Trump care about people like Mark Zuckerberg? Trump is the president, and while he may not be the richest person in the world, he is, arguably the most powerful person in the world right now. Well, Mark Zuckerberg was one of many billionaires who donated money to Trump's campaign. He gave $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund, and he settled a lawsuit for $25 million where Trump claimed that Meta violated his First Amendment rights when they suspended his Facebook and Instagram accounts following the January 6th riots at the Capitol. Additionally, he made himself a regular fixture at Mar-a-Lago, and he was one of those esteemed billionaire guests sitting in Trump's box at the inauguration, in front of politicians and in front of cabinet members. Then he bought a $23 million mansion in Washington, D.C. just to be closer to Trump. Presumably, all of this was done to curry favor with Trump under the assumption, whether it was spoken or implied, that Trump would help Zuckerberg out with all of his presidential powers, specifically to evade the giant antitrust trial against Meta from the Federal Trade Commission.
Now his new costume is MMA fighting or whatever, free speech. We don't know what the next costume is going to be, but it'll be something different. It's whatever gets him closest to power.
The FTC has accused Facebook of buying Instagram for $1 billion to neutralize its competition. On one hand, you can argue that this is just the way business is done in this country, and Mark Zuckerberg is winning at capitalism. But on the other hand, you could argue that business isn't actually supposed to be done that way in this country because we have antitrust laws, and because we're supposed to break up monopolies because of the volatility they create in markets. Capitalism really doesn't work for the people of a nation without antitrust laws in place and enforced. Unregulated capitalism is bad for democracy, as we should all know by now. Besides, the FTC has receipts that work against Mark Zuckerberg, where he writes plainly that Facebook needs to buy Instagram because they are a threat to his business. So the FTC offered Meta the option to settle for $30 billion and avoid a trial. Instead, Zuckerberg offered $450 million and later increased his offer to $1 billion. Again, that's compared to the $30 billion settlement offer from the FTC. These negotiations were happening at a time when Mark Zuckerberg was said to be confident that Trump would protect him and his business from any catastrophic damage. But that didn't work. And then earlier this month, Trump had a meeting in the Oval Office with his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, the FTC chair, Andrew Ferguson, and some antitrust advisors. By the end of the meeting, Trump said, "Let it go to trial." In other words, Zuckerberg is in the exact same position he was in before he gave Trump $1 million, before he settled Trump's $25 million lawsuit, before he bought a $23 million mansion just to be near to Trump. Not to mention, he spent all of that time hanging out with Trump to make sure they were friends, and he didn't have to do any of that. That is time and energy and effort that Mark Zuckerberg will never get back. Anyway, that trial is now ongoing. As it stands, the lowest amount that the FTC is willing to accept in a settlement is still $18 billion, far more than the $1 billion that Zuckerberg was offering, but still a lot less than the $30 billion that they originally wanted. The FTC is saying that Zuckerberg tried to buy or bury his competition, which just feels like Silicon Valley 101, but Meta's defense is that TikTok is still bigger than Facebook and Instagram. After 3 days on trial, here is how things have been going.
What was interesting about yesterday's proceedings was that they went through a treasure trove of emails. The one that you mentioned is worth noting, but I also want to note that they also brought up some emails where apparently Mark Zuckerberg was entertaining the idea of Facebook potentially buying Snapchat. They ultimately decided that wasn't the right acquisition, the right fit for them. They went for Instagram and WhatsApp instead. And that email, as you mentioned, has been the one that's been garnering the most attention. This email where he was noting, well, even after the acquisition, at some point down the line, because of antitrust scrutiny, maybe they'll have to divest those companies. Now, if that is a smoking gun for the government, the company is pushing back. They're arguing that that was just scenario planning given the political rhetoric of the time. And kind of the argument is that, all right, well, if the government wants to say that is the case for this company being a monopoly, well, then they also have to prove that they use their scale and their also massive size to basically bully the competition, which they say is kind of ignored in this case because TikTok is not mentioned as one of those competitors.
Now the FTC needs to be able to prove that these acquisitions were made with the intent of building some kind of empire or monopoly, and this is expected to take months. So what does Meta have to lose if the trial doesn't go in its favor?
What would be at stake would be them having to divest WhatsApp and or Instagram or spin it off. And that could be a big thing for Meta, which is really trying to lean into using all of its platforms and incorporating its AI tools. They've been doing that slowly across Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Wouldn't be able to do that if it were the case that they would be a separate company. So this would be a pretty substantial breakup and something I imagine other big tech companies are watching as well. When you think about Google, you think about Apple. They are also massive big tech companies. They want to see how these proceedings go to see if the antitrust cards maybe end up impacting them as well.
Yeah, lots of tech companies paying close attention to this one.
And very quickly at the end there, he mentioned that many tech companies are paying attention to this trial because, as I said, this is just Silicon Valley 101. You buy or bury your competition. It's how entrepreneurship is actually taught in business schools. You build a company with the intention of selling it off eventually, or you get big enough yourself so that you're the one making those acquisitions. It's a whole entity of law and business, mergers and acquisitions. It's literally capitalism, but capitalism isn't supposed to be allowed to run rampant in a democracy. It's not on its own a sustainable system within a democracy. But speaking of other tech companies, a judge has just ruled that Google is operating an illegal ad monopoly. I would be surprised to find that the Trump administration is the one to finally clamp down on monopolies, whether they're in tech or other industries, but whatever, I'll take it. I still don't believe that Trump doesn't do anything that doesn't benefit himself in some way, ultimately. But if his own personal goals somehow result in Meta being broken up, then so be it. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.